The day my mother told me I wasn't part of her family anymore. I didn't cry. I just stood there, holding the teacup she'd given me every time I'd come visit. Funny how a plain old teacup could suddenly feel like the heaviest thing in the world. You'd think after everything we'd been through, after everything I did for her, she'd still see me as her daughter. But that day, standing in her warm little kitchen, sunlight coming in through the lace curtains, she said it as softly as someone saying, "Please pass the salt," like it was no big thing. She said, "I think it's best if you stop coming around so much. Things are different now." Different. Yes, they were. But I never imagined they'd change this much. Let me start from the beginning, so you can understand how we got here. So maybe someone out there listening won't make the same mistake I did. I grew up in a small, quiet town on the edge of nowhere. The kind of town where everyone knows your family name, where birthdays are still celebrated with homemade cakes, and where your mother's voice could reach you even from 2 houses down. My name is Lila, and for most of my life, my mother was my everything. My father passed when I was just 6. I have a memory of him holding an umbrella high above both our heads. We were walking home from the grocery store. My feet were soaked from the puddles, but I didn't care because I had one hand in his big warm hand and one lemon sweet tucked in my coat pocket. He died of a heart attack only a few weeks later, a quiet still goodbye during his afternoon nap. He never woke up. After that, it was just me and Mama. She was strong. Too strong, maybe. I remember thinking she was like a lighthouse, never shaking, never stopping, always shining even when the rest of the world went dark. She worked 2 jobs for years, mornings at the school cafeteria, evenings at the cleaners. She'd come home with tired eyes, but she never forgot to ask me how my day was. She'd cut apples into little star shapes just to see me smile. She'd sit at the end of my bed and braid my hair, whispering stories she'd heard from her own mother. We didn't have much, but we had each other. And honestly, that felt like enough. As I got older, I tried to repay her in every way I could. I didn't go off to college like other kids in our town. I stayed home, got a job at the local pharmacy, helped with bills, made sure she never missed a meal or a doctor's visit. She never asked me to do those things, but I wanted to, because I believed in loyalty, in gratitude, in taking care of those who'd taken care of you. When I was 24, I married a man named Daniel, soft-spoken, careful with his words. He'd lost his own mother young, so he understood pain in his own way. We didn't have a big wedding, just cake and coffee in my mother's backyard. I wore her old earrings. She cried that day, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand as if she didn't want anyone to see. "You look just like I did when I married your father," she said to me softly. "But I hope you have fewer tears and more laughter." We made a small life, nothing fancy, just quiet dinners, folded laundry, shared looks in the kitchen while the kettle boiled. Mama still lived close by. I'd visit her every week, sometimes more. She'd make her favourite lentil soup and tell me I was too thin. We'd sit for hours, just the 2 of us and the creaking ceiling fan. It was safe. It was home. Until the changes started. Mama met someone new. His name was Thomas. Tall, older, smiled a lot, almost too much. He was charming, I'll say that. He came around the house often, always with a grocery bag and fresh flowers for the table. At first I was happy for her. She'd been alone nearly 2 decades. Everyone deserves some happiness, right? Still, there was something about him that made something twist in my gut. Nothing I could put my finger on. He looked at me like I was a guest, not her daughter. He'd always say my name like it had quotation marks. "And how's Lila?" Like I was just someone passing through her life. But I didn't say anything. I told myself I was imagining it. After all, Mama was smiling more, laughing more, getting dressed up in little floral blouses and putting on earrings again. I hadn't seen her do that in years, so I bit my tongue. They got married quietly, one spring morning. A courthouse ceremony. She told me over the phone. It was nothing big, baby. Just paperwork. I didn't want a fuss. No tea party, no back porch celebration. Just a shrug. I'll admit, that stung a little. After the wedding, things changed slowly. But they changed. She started answering my calls less often. She said Thomas liked quiet in the evenings. She stopped cooking the soups we used to share. Said she was trying a new recipe book he'd given her. European flavours, she called them. I'd come over with apple pie and she'd say, Thomas is watching his sugar these days. Let's keep it in the fridge. Eventually, I stopped bringing pie. Eventually, she stopped making tea. One day I came by, and the family photos from the hallway were gone, replaced by framed prints of city skylines, places she'd never been. Photos of me as a little girl, gone. Even the one of her and my father on their wedding day. I asked her once gently, "Where are the old pictures?" She just smiled and said, "Oh, they're packed away. We're redecorating." But they never came back out. It started to feel like I was visiting a stranger's house, like I had to knock a little longer before she'd open the door. I don't know when I became someone she had to whisper about. She stopped telling me things. When she slipped and hurt her wrist, I didn't hear it from her. I heard it from the lady who lived across the street. I rushed over, brought her soup and a heat pad, but she brushed me off. "It's nothing," she said. "Thomas is taking care of me." That sentence, it hung in the room, thicker than the soup in my hands, like she didn't need me anymore. I nodded. I smiled. I left early that day. Daniel noticed, of course. "She doesn't come around anymore, huh?" he said one night, washing dishes next to me. I just shook my head. Neither of us said anything more. It was too quiet between us lately. We'd been trying for a baby for 4 years. Nothing had happened. The doctors weren't sure why. I hadn't told Mama. I didn't know how. She used to be the one I told everything to, but now I didn't even know what kind of soup she liked anymore. One Sunday afternoon, everything changed for real. I came by with a little tulip plant. Yellow one's her favourite. I hadn't called ahead, just wanted it to be a small surprise. I knocked. Waited. When she opened the door, she didn't smile. It was that tired, quiet face she had when the world had worn her out. "Oh, Lila, I didn't know you were coming." The house behind her was clean, too clean. Curtains tied just so, carpet marks still on the floor from the vacuum. Thomas always liked things just right. "I won't stay long," I said, lifting the plant. "Thought you might like these." She took them gently, nodded, but didn't step back to invite me in. Then she said it. "I think it's best if you don't come so often. Just for a while. Thomas thinks it's harder for me to move on when I'm always looking back." Move on. As if I was the past. As if I was a season to be packed away like the old photos. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Okay," I said. Just that one word. Because any more, and I'd cry. After that Sunday, I waited for her to call. A week went by. Then 2. No phone call, no visit. Not even a text. So I didn't call her either. I told myself I was giving her space. That maybe Thomas just needed time to get used to me. That maybe she didn't mean what she said. Not really. But deep down, I knew. I wasn't part of her new world. The pharmacy where I worked wasn't far from her house. Some days after my shift, I'd take the long way home, just to drive by. Her curtains would be drawn. Porch lights clicked on automatically every evening. From the outside, it all looked so peaceful. But I wasn't welcome there anymore. One evening, I saw her through the window, laughing. Sitting at the table with Thomas and 2 young women I didn't recognize. They were eating pasta and passing bread between them. She looked happy. I pulled over and just sat there in my car. The laughter from that kitchen felt like a sound I used to know, once mine, no longer. Later that night, Daniel found me sitting on the edge of the bed, still in my uniform, shoes kicked off, staring at nothing. You saw her? He asked gently. I nodded. She looked happy, I whispered. Then I added, without meaning to, happier than she's been in years. He didn't say anything, just sat beside me, one hand rubbing my back in slow circles like he used to when we first got married. Weeks passed. I kept my distance. She didn't reach out and I didn't want to beg. But then I started noticing little things in the community. Mrs. Fletcher from the bakery asked, Lila, how's your mother enjoying her new grandchildren? I paused, confused. Her what? Oh, I just assumed. Thomas's daughters, I think. They're around often. I saw them together at the grocery. Such a lovely family. Family. That word again, stretching like a rubber band inside me, tightening around my ribs. I went home that night and sat at our dinner table long after Daniel had fallen asleep. Just sat. Because something inside me was shifting. Jealousy? Maybe. But deeper than that. Something lost. My whole life I thought of myself as her only family. Now she had daughters again. Daughters who weren't me. And I was a ghost haunting the edges of her life. I tried one more time. I texted her one Saturday morning. Would love to drop by tomorrow with cake. Just to say hi. Hours passed. No reply. It wasn't until Sunday afternoon that I got a message. Not from her, but from Thomas. Just one line. Please respect your mother's wishes. She needs peace right now. No greeting, no warmth, no please come back later or she misses you. Just peace. And I understood then. I wasn't part of her peace. After that, something in me curled up like a leaf in winter. I called less, smiled less. Even Daniel began to look at me with quiet concern. You want to go out this weekend? He asked one night. Maybe the lake? It might give you a little fresh air. I shook my head. No, I don't feel like being near water. Too many memories there. Too many walks with Mama on the pier, feeding crumbs to ducks, her hand tightening on mine whenever the wind picked up. Going back would just hurt. In the weeks that followed, the silences at home grew louder. Daniel and I kept missing each other in conversation, like two trains passing but never stopping. We'd sit at dinner, forks scraping plates, TV noise humming low in the background. One evening I asked him, Do you think I did something wrong? He looked up, fork frozen halfway to his mouth. To your mum? I nodded. No, he said. You're not the problem, Lila. You're just the reminder of a life Thomas didn't build. That sat in my chest like a stone, because I knew he was right. A month later, it was Mother's Day. Hardest day of the year. My phone stayed quiet that morning. Not even a simple, thinking of you. No flowers, no card, nothing from her. But somehow, I couldn't stay home that day. All my thoughts kept pulling me in one direction, back to the place I wasn't welcome anymore. Not to ask for anything, not to fight, just to see, just to look, once. I parked across the street, hidden behind a tree. Her house had balloons outside. A banner that read, Happy Mother's Day, hung flimsy but cheerful across the porch railing. And she was there. Wearing the cream cardigan I bought her 2 winters ago. Grinning, clapping her hands as Thomas emerged with a chocolate cake and a loud, Ta-da! Beside her were the same 2 women from before. I assumed they were Thomas's daughters. One handed Mama a wrapped box. The other leaned in and kissed her on the cheek. She beamed. She held them close like they'd always belonged. And something inside me quietly broke. Not shattered, just cracked. So slowly I didn't even realize it had happened. I watched for a few more minutes, then turned the key in the ignition and drove home. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. But when I walked through the door, Daniel looked up from the couch and saw it in my eyes. And for the first time in a long time, I let him hold me as I fell apart. Not loudly, just soft sobs that felt like they'd been waiting a year to come out. She's still your mother, he said gently. But even as he said it, I could tell he wasn't sure either. And it wasn't about the title anymore. It was about the door she'd closed, slowly, quietly, without slamming, but locked just the same. After that day, I stopped going near her street, stopped checking her front yard for signs. That part of my life had faded into the background like an old song I used to hum before bed. Instead, I started planting things in our yard. First herbs, then tomatoes, then flowers. I found peace not in replacing her, but in remembering who I was before the silence. And then, out of the blue, something I never expected. A letter. No return address. No name on the envelope. Just my name. Inside was a card. Simple, no decoration. And in her handwriting, the old curling lines I used to copy when I was little, was just this. I miss you every day. Still finding the words. Love you. Mama. No date, no explanations, just raw, softened truth. I sat there holding the card for an hour. Did I forgive her? Not right away. Did I call her? Not yet. But something unlocked. Something shifted back into place like the soft creak of a once-stuck door. They say time heals. Maybe that's true. But some wounds don't close from the inside, not until someone reaches into the silence and says, I see you. I remember. That letter, as simple as it was, sat on our kitchen table for 4 days. Every time I passed by, I looked at it again. I read the words over and over like maybe something new would appear, some clue, some signal, something more than still finding the words. Finding the words. Wasn't that the hardest part? We never really argued, Mama and me. We didn't shout or slam doors. Our distance wasn't made of fights. It was made of habits, choices, replacements, and the quiet. Always the quiet. Are you going to call her? Daniel asked one evening, his voice barely above a whisper as we got ready for bed. I stood in the doorway, clutching the towel to my chest like it might anchor me. Not yet, I said, because I wasn't ready. Not just to hear her voice, but to hear how different it might sound. Almost 3 more weeks passed after the letter. Each day I wondered if she'd call this time. She didn't, but the letter stayed, taped gently to the inside of our cabinet door, behind the spices, where no one else could see. I read it every morning like a little prayer I didn't know the name for. Then, something happened. It was late July. Early one Sunday morning, I saw her name flash on my phone screen. I froze. My heart beat so loud it made it hard to hear the ringtone. For a moment, I didn't answer. Then, almost without thinking, I slid my thumb across the screen. Mama? There was silence. Long silence. Then I heard her voice. Hi, baby. Hi, I whispered back. I didn't even know if she heard me. She sighed. I didn't think you'd pick up. I wasn't sure I would either. I understand, she said quietly. You have every reason not to. Then there was more silence. Each space between our words felt like a hallway we had to walk down slowly. I sat down on the couch. You sent me a letter, I said. Yes. I didn't expect it to fix anything, but I wanted you to know I still think about you. Every day. My eyes burned. I didn't want to cry. Not yet. I used to call every day, Mama. I know, she said. That's what kept me going, even after your daddy passed. Even when I didn't say it. I was so proud of you, Lila. I still am. Another pause. Then why did you shut me out? There it was. The question. Heavy. Quiet. Real. I heard her take a deep breath. Because, she said slowly, I got used to being alone. I thought that was all I deserved, until Thomas came along. He made me feel seen, wanted, like I still had time left for a different kind of life. Her voice trembled, just a little. But when I opened that new door, I didn't know how to keep the old one open too. That hurt. But I understood what she meant. I think sometimes love looks like a pie chart. Everyone gets a slice, and when new people enter your life, you rearrange the pieces. But what she did felt like scraping my piece off the plate completely. I felt my hands tremble on the fabric of the couch cushion as I asked the next question. "Did Thomas tell you I shouldn't come around?" She didn't hesitate. He never said it directly, but he didn't have to. Her sigh was long, sad. He would say things like, "You always look so tired after she leaves," or "It's hard to make room for something new when you keep holding on to the past." Eventually, I started believing it. "Did you want to believe it?" I asked. "No," she said quietly, "but I knew it made things easier." I closed my eyes. I thought of that afternoon standing in her kitchen holding the teacup, afraid to drop it. "Why didn't you ever say anything?" I asked softly. She whispered, "I thought you'd say I was selfish." "You were." There was no anger in my voice, just truth. She nodded. I could hear it in the breath that followed. "I know." I let the silence stretch again, this time because I didn't want to say the next words. Not because I didn't feel them, but because they scared me. "I missed you so much it made my chest ache," I whispered. I felt like I had been erased. Her voice cracked. "I don't blame you, Lila. I would have felt the same if you had done this to me." Then she added after a pause, "You didn't deserve any of it. I just didn't know how to balance what I wanted with what I already had." I cried then, not loudly, just soft tears down my cheeks as I gripped the phone like it might disappear. "I'm not trying to keep you from happiness," I said. "I just wanted to belong in it too." She sobbed, just once. A single sound quickly swallowed. "You do," she said. "You always did. I just lost sight of that." We talked for over an hour. Daniel brought me tea and just rubbed my shoulder gently while I spoke. By the end of the call, Mama said something I hadn't heard in nearly a year. "Will you come over next weekend? No pressure. Just us. Just you and me." I didn't say yes right away, but I didn't say no. I told her I'd think about it, and even that made her cry. "That's more than I expected," she said. That night, Daniel and I sat on the porch. The stars were out. Crickets filled the silence. "You okay?" he asked. "I think so," I said. He smiled. Then he reached down and picked up a rough little clay mug I'd made years ago in an art class, crooked, uneven edges. "We still use this cup," he said, "even when we have nicer ones in the cabinet." I looked at him, confused. He shrugged. "Just because something new comes into your life doesn't mean you throw out what was already holding everything together." I looked at the stars, and I realized something. It wasn't about being forgiven. It wasn't even about being chosen again. It was about being seen. And I finally felt like she saw me again. I didn't go that weekend, not because I didn't want to, Kite, but because I needed time. Time to sit with it, to believe it, to let the bruises soften before I put myself back in the same room where it happened. Funny how some places can hold both the deepest love and the sharpest pain. But a week later, I found myself getting dressed on a cool Friday morning. Cream sweater. The one Mama always said brought out the gold in my eyes. I brushed my hair the way she used to, part to the side, no clips, clean, simple. And then I opened the box in the bottom of the drawer, the one I hadn't touched in over a year. Inside were photos of me and Mama at the fair, at the lake, at my wedding, laughing by the garden, even one of us rolling pie crust at 2 a.m, flour in our hair. It was my favourite. I took that one and slipped it into my bag. Then I picked up a bag of groceries, lentils, carrots, fresh thyme, just like the soup she used to make. And I drove. Her house hadn't changed much. Same white shutters, same porch swing. But when I walked up the steps, everything felt smaller somehow. Or maybe I'd just grown. She opened the door before I could knock, and for a moment we just stood there, looking at each other. Two women with the same mouth, the same tired eyes, the same stories stored deep inside their hearts. Then she smiled. Just a little. Is it okay if I hug you? She asked. I nodded. And we stood there a long moment, arms wrapped around each other, like the past was being folded gently between us. The house smelled the same, rosemary and lemon, but the photos were different. Now some of them were back. She had put out the wedding picture again, the one of Daddy holding me on his shoulders when I was 4, and on the kitchen fridge was a picture of me and Daniel, our arms around each other at a park last fall. I walked slowly, taking it all in. I missed you so much, she said. I missed this, I whispered. We sat at the table, just like old times. I placed the groceries on the counter. She smiled when she saw the lentils. You remembered. How could I forget? We cooked like we used to, quiet at first, careful. The rhythm slowly came back, chopping, stirring, passing spoons, old habits that lived in our hands even when our words couldn't find their way back. We didn't talk much while the soup simmered. But silence like that wasn't heavy anymore. It was healing. After lunch, she poured tea, in the same pea-green cups she'd used my whole childhood. And then she reached across the table and held my hand. Lila, she said, can I tell you something? Something I've never told anyone? I looked at her, nodding gently. After your father died, she began, I was broken. I didn't know how to be a single mother. You were so little and I was so scared. She blinked hard. But you were so strong. Even then, always looking out for me, even as a child. I think I got used to that love, to always being the one who was cared for. I squeezed her hand. Mama. She shook her head slowly. No, let me finish. When Thomas came along, I wanted something easy, something that didn't need me to be strong all the time. And I think I forgot that love also means holding on to the hard parts. We sat in the quiet. A breeze came through the open window. The curtains danced just a little. You didn't have to choose, I said softly. She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. But I did, and I chose wrong. I didn't say, yes, you did. I didn't need to. She already carried that weight herself. Instead, I reached into my bag and pulled out that photo, the one of us in the kitchen covered in flour. I placed it on the table. I brought this, just in case you wanted to remember how much you still have. She stared at the photo for a long time. Then she leaned forward, rested her head on my shoulder, like she used to when she cried quietly at night, thinking I was asleep. Thank you, she whispered. Not for the soup, not for the photo, but for coming back. Later that afternoon, I walked through the garden while she stayed inside cleaning up the dishes. She had tulips coming in, yellow and white. Near the fence was a piece of wood painted with the words, "Let love grow even in forgotten soil." I smiled at it, because sometimes love isn't loud. Sometimes it's quiet, patient, returning. Just before I left, she handed me a small envelope. Nothing fancy. Inside was a note and a key. The note said, "This is the spare, the one I should have never taken back. Come home anytime. No explanations needed." I left that day lighter, not because everything was fixed, but because we'd stopped pretending the hurt wasn't there. We looked at it, we said its name, and then we started again. Daniel was waiting for me when I got home. He stood in the doorway, like he always did when he was worried and didn't want to show it. "How was it?" he asked, stepping forward gently. I held up the key. Then I smiled. "It was real." He smiled back. "Real is good." That night we curled up on the couch, a soft blanket over our legs, just like old times. I rested my head on his shoulder and closed my eyes. And I cried again, not the sharp ache of loss, but the soft weeping of a wound beginning to heal. It's been almost a year since the day I walked back into my mother's kitchen. Not everything is perfect, and maybe it never will be. But love, real love, doesn't need things to be perfect. It just needs us to keep showing up. One visit became 2, then 3. Now the silence that used to stretch for months lives only between sips of tea. She hasn't changed completely. Thomas is still around, of course. He's polite, careful, still calls me Lila like it's borrowed. But now, she reaches for my hand during awkward dinners. She includes me in holiday plans. She tells me she loves me before I leave. Small things. They matter more than I ever thought they could. The photo I gave her still sits in the kitchen, right by the fruit bowl. She framed it last winter. Told me, "I want to look at that smile of yours every morning." I didn't cry when she said that. But I did the next morning, at home. Quiet tears. The kind that ask no attention. Just release. And then, there was the day she came by unannounced. Arms full of groceries. "Don't worry," she said with a grin. "I'm not here to stay. Just thought you and Daniel might enjoy some of your old favourites." Then she paused, looked around the living room like it was sacred territory. "It still smells like comfort here." I smiled. We had a cup of tea. I braided her hair at the table like I used to, careful with the thin grey strands she used to dye golden in the bathroom sink. "Getting old is strange," she told me. "So is growing up," I said. We both laughed, quietly, together. I think one of the hardest lessons I've had to learn is this. Even good people can hurt you, not because they meant to, but because they didn't know how not to. Losing my mother while she was still alive. That was a kind of grief I wasn't prepared for. It wasn't like losing my father, fast and final. It was long, quiet, invisible. But just like love, grief changes shape. And when you let it, when you face it, it can leave behind something softer, wiser, something that whispers, "You're still here. I'm still here. Let's try again." Mama and I don't talk about everything. We still avoid certain moments, still skip over some pain like cracks in a sidewalk. But now, we walk together, carefully, lovingly, choosing every day to keep going. As for me and Daniel, we're quietly dreaming again. We still light a candle every month, for the child we haven't met yet, not in sorrow, but in hope. Mama joins us sometimes. She brings cookies, rubs my back, looks at Daniel with kind eyes. "You two are already a family," she said once. "Everything else is just a miracle waiting for its time." And I believed her. For the first time, I really believed her. So here's what I want you to carry from my story. If someone you love has drifted away, if there's distance where there once was warmth, don't be afraid to acknowledge the ache. Let yourself feel it. Sit with it. And when the time is right, if it ever is, open the door a crack. Not wide, not all at once, just a little. Sometimes that's all it takes. A little crack where love used to live. To remind both of you it's never too late to come home. This was my story. And maybe a little of yours too. Thank you for listening.